steps can we take to change the nomenclature that reflects our actual realities? For example, developed countries versus developing countries, third world, first world, second world, Western versus non-Western. These things are, this vocabulary were things that affected me growing up in Cameroon, learning that I'm from a third world country when my reality was not necessarily third world, developing and underdeveloped. Every single country in the world is developing. No country is stagnant. So why is it that certain countries are developed and others are third world, underdeveloped? And what steps can we take to really change that narrative and, take it back? Thank you.
What language would you use instead? So in terms, you used the example developing countries. Mm-hmm. Do you have any idea of what you think might be?
I think it's not that the issue, I think my issue is that certain countries are considered completely and fulfilled and they're developed and others are still developing, right? And the truth is, we are all developing, but I understand your point when you're saying if we stop distinguishing that, then the countries who do need aid that are still at, the rural level will not necessarily get that. I'm not sure that I have the nomenclature right now, and I believe it's something that everybody needs to think about, but I believe just the concept of feeling inferior because of that nomenclature and growing up in that sense, I think that is what affects a lot of people, and others feeling superior because of that nomenclature. And now when you put them together in a room, then you have that dynamic where they grew up feeling superior and you grew up feeling inferior. So I think that's where I'm coming from with that.
So really what we're really talking about is dignity and condescension. Right? I have to tell you about many years ago, I was giving this prize, a literary prize, small prize in Denmark, but the prize was for writers from warm countries. But here's the thing. So it was me, it was a writer from Nepal, a writer from there's somewhere else that is decidedly not warm. So it was, these people, I guess, were so worried about maybe saying writers from developing countries that I think they went to the other extreme of just something, something absurd. I got an award for being a writer from a warm country. So I hear you, but I think as we are all thinking about, we should also really resist being patronizing, right? That there is also, I think we should also start with the assumption that those of us who come from countries that have often been called developing or third world, we're also resilient people. Where I don't want us to be condescended to or patronized, or I don't think that I would even like it if somebody said, "Oh, let's all call all countries developed," or "Let's call all countries developing," because it's a lie. There are differences, And I think that if we did that, we also, in some ways, to what Chida was saying, not just about who gets aid, who should contribute more, but also it seems to me that then we're negating history because I think the history of exploitation kind of becomes right. We almost erase it if we don't really focus on the differences. I mean, sometimes I walk the streets of London and I'm pointing at buildings and thinking, okay, what they stole from Nigeria, they used for this one. What they stole from India, they used in this one. What they stole from Kenya. The point is that there is a history of exploitation, which in many ways, I think, the story of it explains why the world is the way it is today, right? I mean, look at what's happening in the Middle East. We go back, and really, Europe is bloody responsible. But, yeah, okay, I'll stop.
We'll take more questions. Yes, Elizabeth.
Great.
Thank you so much for being here tonight. I'm a former SAIS PhD. In 2009, your talk on stories really catalyzed me into thinking and owning my own. So a personal thank you tonight for what you have done. My question is because now I work at the intersection of the private sector, international development, and gender. And so often, and I think it's resonated with this room tonight, so often I find myself in rooms where the stories of the women that are being impacted by the work that I'm doing are not in the room, or they're not validated. And this is especially challenging when those stories need to be informing the policy and the operations and the things that we do, and they're not there. And so as a storyteller, as a West African woman, as an activist, a feminist, what are the ways in which you use your platform to create the space for those diverse stories? How do we do it in our little corners? What tools do you have for us in creating the space for those types of stories? Especially so that when women do take the platform of leadership, rather than sort of having to swim up against a dominant paradigm, they are greeted with the swell of familiar narratives and familiar stories.
Would you mind very much if I asked for more specifics about the work that you do? I'm just trying to understand what stories are not given space. Yeah.
Sure. So I think I often find that, especially in international development, while we're creating strategies, while we're creating operations and policies, it's not rural women who are writing those policies. And the language, I think, to the conversation we were having before, I grew up in rural West Africa, in Ghana, and the conversations that I have with my aunties about firewood and the impact of climate change are not the sorts of conversations that I'm having at the upper echelons of policy and strategy making. And that discord, it stands with me. It's becoming more and more of an irritation under my belt of how to bridge that gap, of how to be a bridge builder myself. But also, how do I pull those stories into the room? Is it my job to amplify? Is it my job to have moral courage? There we go.
Yeah, it's your job to speak for those women. It's your job to risk being unlikable for pushing the story. It's your job to insist. It's your job to point out, right? It's your job. Because if you don't do it, nobody else will. This is the thing about, when we complain about the hypocrisy of the people from cold countries and the hypocrisy of policies, I often sit back and think, we all have our interests and our agendas. So there's a sense in which unless we do the work, nobody's going to do the work for us. Rural women in Ghana, in Cameroon, in Nigeria, they matter. The people who have access to them, who know them, the people for whom they are full human beings, are the people who have to speak for them and push their stories forward. So yes, it's your job. So go do it.
My name is Onyebuchi Kosiobuli. I'm one of the esteemed members of the Nigerian men community. So, hello, thank you. Thank you so much for coming here and speaking to us, and thank you all for the guests as well too for giving us and offering us an opportunity to learn about a lot of things and just expose ourselves to the narratives that are important here. My question is really around the importance of technology, and especially in terms of changing the narratives and unlearning. What opportunities or risks do you see of technology changing how we tell stories and how we connect with one another?
I think people should get off TikTok. I just want to add something to my sister from Ghana. I said risk being unlikable, and I mean that. Right? I really think that for every woman in the world, often you have to take the risk of being unlikable to get something done. But I think while that is happening, remember that there's so many for whom you will be very lovable. And you will be very loved. Not just those women in rural Cameroon and rural Ghana and rural Nigeria, but women like us who have class privilege, we're going to be grateful to you because you've done something for women. So I guess my point is, remember to balance that. Sometimes I think, women, because women know that they get the pushback they get, and the backlash often will be harsh when they step out of line. It's also important to remember that it's not only about the backlash. There is also an army of love that, and my Nigerian brother, so that's it. Get off TikTok. Yeah. And limit, if you have children, start limiting social media. No, I really, I find myself often feeling like the scold about social media, but I've just read too much and seen too much. And and it's not that I'm sort of advocating a life, let's all be Luddites and not use technology, but they're just inherent problems. And I know that you're not talking only about social media, of course, but I think social media is a big part of it. And I think particularly for young people, particularly for girls, there's just, and Instagram. It's a disaster how, I have young nieces who suddenly, Instagram invents problems for girls. So recently, one of my nieces said to me, "Oh, auntie, I have hip dip." I'm like, what the F is that? So apparently, it's a new thing that some influencers on Instagram are telling people that they have something called hip dip, and here's what you need to do to get. And I said to her, no, you're normal. Your body is fine. But the point is that takes up space in her brain and her mind that could have gone to something useful, So, I don't have anything useful to say about technology, honestly.
Yes, so hi, my name is Sandrine Irankunda, and I'm a student here, size third-year PhD student. So thank you so much for being here and sharing your wisdom and inspiring all of us. I know the theme of this event is authentic leadership, and I just wanted to ask, what does that mean to you, and how do you kind of adapt that to the different international spaces that you find yourself in?
Now I feel like I'm with my therapist. It's about reaching into my soul. I think in some ways, the women on the panel speaking about authentic leadership, I felt the words were resonant for me. I think it is about something internal. And so I was really fortunate to have lovely parents. I adored my parents, and it's still very hard for me to accept that they're gone. Right, my father died, and then months later my mother died, and I still cannot face it that my mother is gone. I can't. And the reason I say this is that was the foundation for me. And so I have often been known to say to people, I don't need your approval because I was loved, I have enough. And now I have really lovely siblings, one of whom is there, my brother, okay. Sometimes he loves me, sometimes. But I think, I just feel that, and my parents were just decent, good people who, believed in basic human things. And I think that really was good for me. And because of that, I had the good fortune of growing up not thinking that I somehow needed to perform for other people. When I was a child, I was kind of known for, being stubborn. But by that, they meant my teachers who said I was stubborn. I think many Africans will understand that she's stubborn. Or often they'll say she has no respect. But it was really that I spoke my mind, and I felt that I should speak my mind, and I felt that my words should matter. I think I was also a bit annoying as a child, but it's about knowing who you are. I know who I am, and I like who I am, and I'm not going to do something that is not true to me to please people. I'm just not going to do that. And the reason I won't is that I won't be happy if I do. I won't sleep well, It's kind of like when someone says something rude to me and I respond in a way that I'm not happy, and then I spend the rest of the week thinking, why? There's a woman, and please put this on social media in the Nigerians, because I want to find her. It was at the airport, or Owerri Airport, about 6 years ago. There are two of them. One of them says, oh, I'm so excited to meet you. I want to take pictures. And then her friend says, I knew you would have one crazy hairstyle on your head. And I remember I was tired, but I actually smiled at her. And I'm so angry that I smiled at her. So I want to find her. So my point is, at that moment, I was not my authentic self, and I didn't like it. that smile that's not what I was feeling. I really wanted to say to her, shut up. So I think, we have to, I think in general, for us, for women and girls, we have to be willing to show our authentic selves. We're the ones who are more likely to hide that self behind layers. And it's understandable because for us, there are consequences in a way that men don't face. But we should be willing to, because I think in the end, we're better off. Be who you are. Young people like to say things like, speak your truth. And I've started to quibble with that expression because now it starts to seem as though there is no objective truth. Each of us has our truth. I mean, we can, but really, I hope I'm making sense, which is, I said I'll keep it short, which is really, that's what authentic leadership is to me. I want to be true to myself. I want to keep trying to be true to myself. And if it helps other people, it makes me happy. If it annoys other people, that's their problem.
My name is Kamal, and I'm a lifelong student. I'll try to be succinct. So I saw from your biography on Wikipedia that you have a daughter in the US. I saw what Wikipedia said to me. So my question is coming from, as a parent, do you find any conflict in your definition of feminism, especially from a cultural lens, raising a child in the US? And one of the reasons why I'm asking this, especially a daughter in the US, according to Wikipedia, and the reason why I'm asking this question is because I have several friends from Africa, from various countries in Africa. And one of my friends from Uganda, she's from a specific ethnic group. And when she was getting, even though she's a feminist, very westernized, she's lived in the US for many years. When she was marrying someone outside of her ethnic group, she insisted that he actually pay a dowry, and she felt that it was compatible with her feminism. So that's one reason why I'm asking this question about this conflict between your own cultural norms, or cultural norms broadly, and reconciling them with what global norms of feminism is about.
Okay, I'm going to argue with the premise of the question.
Okay.
And it's that you're conflating feminism and Western.
Okay.
And I really have to quarrel with that because I don't think that's true. I often say that I didn't become a feminist because I read feminist books by Westerners. I became a feminist because I just watched my world growing up in small town in Soka in southeastern Nigeria. And I also think that I'm a feminist because my family believes that my great-grandmother come back. My great-grandmother was the fiercest woman in my hometown. She challenged men. She was known as headstrong and a troublemaker. She was a feminist. If you look at Nigerian history, the feminists, about women when they rose up and said, no, you're not going to tax us, the British government, they were feminists. So I really think it's important for us not to, Western feminism is the most, I suppose, documented feminism and therefore the most familiar feminism, but it is not the only feminism. And I don't, and I think there's actually a lot about African indigenous cultures that are feminist. Actually, there's a lot we should hold those intrepid missionaries responsible for. Because I've found myself going back. I'm really interested in pre-colonial African cultures, and it's fascinating to me the powers that women had. This really wonderful thing about sitting on a man. So in Igbo culture, a man, beats his wife or something. His wife tells the community of women, you know what they do? They all gather and sit on him. I just love that. I think we should bring that back. But no, I don't feel any contradictions. I'm raising my daughter. My husband and I are raising our daughter. And none at all. We're raising her. She knows that she is Nigerian. She also, switches easily to her American self. And we're raising her with very feminist ideas. And what are feminist ideas? Just really about justice, about saying that you shouldn't, just because a person is a female person, that person should not be held back. Really, that's what it is. That person deserves full dignity. So no, not at all. And I own that as an Igbo feminism, a Nigerian feminism, an African feminism. I do not think. And the question of dowry, I know I said I'll keep it short, but I'll even that we can talk about, right? Because, and you say that, pay dowry as opposed to Western global. But this is also a culture, this Western global culture in which men are expected to buy very expensive rings. And I don't know if you would ask a Western global woman whether her feminism is in conflict with expecting an engagement ring. I mean, I quite frankly, I really do find the idea of expensive engagement rings to be quite ridiculous. But, dowries make a bit more sense to me. And you have to also remember that we also have to remember that dowries were not, the real meaning of dowries, and it really was about family. It's really not that you're buying a woman. I want to be very clear. I think the idea of a bride price, I'm not a fan of it. However, my father, who was a professor, who read every kind of book in the world, was also an Igbo man, and he had a lot of respect for his culture. And so because of my father, I let the bride price happen for me. But my father made it, he didn't want money. He wanted it to be symbolic. So in that way, you kind of can make changes, but still be true to the spirit of your culture. And I don't think that is anti-feminist. That we also give gifts to the groom's family. Not money. So no, you better leave that friend of yours alone. Stop bothering her about dowry.
I'm a king, yes, I'm a king, I think I'm a king,